So my name's David Woodger and I work at Goldsmiths. Training youth and community workers on undergraduate and master's programs, and I've been mainly my focus of work has been around race equality, as well as thinking about learning and ways of really embedding understandings in learning and teaching that have some meaning and impact for leadership and action. I mean, a couple of examples of the everyday experiences of racism operated in the health service were situations that we started to look at where I suppose you could group them in the sort of terms of communication and relationship. So you'd have these practitioners who would be either in the hospital or in the community or in people's homes. And in a way we started to explore this with the practitioners, is that they would be tiptoeing around things with the person, and their relationship you could see was not connected, or they weren't building a relationship. You feel the mistrust coming from the practitioner because in a way their unfamiliarity with themselves or being comfortable in an environment that was different, and so therefore they would shortcut many assessments or dialogues or discussions, even the diagnostic discussions around patients in pain. That was a big issue that came up, the pain thresholds and all these stereotypes and judgments that were being made in their own minds that were uncommunicated but almost implicit in the relationship, and therefore you got this disconnection constantly going on. And when we started to explore it in these learning groups with these practitioners, they started to realise it. It was quite quick to start to see that they thought this, they thought that, or they thought that the family was bringing in food for this elder when they weren't. So right through from the practical through to this relationship building, which was not really connected. And as a result, then you got a whole set of other consequences in terms of referrals or other engagements that weren't happening as a result, because they weren't discovering truly what was happening. They weren't hearing the cues or the understandings to probe or to look at something further. So in a way, what we discovered, and I guess this is a feature of sort of a significant aspect of whiteness, is in the sense the fear of the other and the unfamiliarity. And they would think that they need to learn more about this person's culture and their background or their faith. And we were really strong with them and said, no, it's what about your faith? What about your culture? What about your values and norms? You need to look at in yourself that needs to be explored, that makes you uncomfortable, because that's all that's happening here. And so it was really, challenging for them, but, this is what they were engaging with, to think about their practice differently so that they were able to be more authentically white in a way in which was confident of working with other people. And we experience this also in our training of community and youth workers. We have a group work which we runs throughout the training of the undergraduate students, and they sit each week, 30 students, talking about many issues. And of course, each student's identity and racial identity is a significant part of those discussions. And again, it's starting to create space and the dialogue between black and white students about those experiences. And of course, white people, it's new for them to think that they've got an experience. They think it's just about black people who've got an experience about racism. But of course, they, whatever age they may be, they've got those experiences deeply embedded within them in terms of their understanding of black people and their normalisation and uncriticalness about who they are in terms of their identity and their role within the sort of position around race and racism. And of course, this is a great opportunity for learning, being able to, and for the black students too, to understand that this is the journey, that the disadvantage actually is within the white communities around this issue, not themselves. They've spent their lives, we spent our lives looking at our own identities and experience because they've been under attack. So we have to look at this aspect of ourselves, whereas for those white students this is new, very new in terms of an exploration of what this means, and then connecting this with their professional practice and working in communities. I think overall, I think it's a very complex area from the point of view of many contributions, many amazing contributions, both in research and writing, and I guess politicians as well. And we've got some great leaders around the world in respect to this particular area, whether it's Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, people who Rosa Parks, people who many people who've raised and brought this issue to the fore. I guess what feels lacking, and this has been my sort of growing up experience of constantly thinking about this in a way, both from my own hurt and pain, is how do we make change? And I guess what I've been describing to some degree is there's a lot more work going on around this. The United States, US have got a lot more work going on thinking about white power, or maybe more to say whiteness, perhaps not so much white power. But we need to deconstruct this and look at this in terms of a sort of an understanding, so that we can see these differential relationships. But fundamentally, the shift and the changes are going to come through almost one by one engagements with people discussing and understanding this, people starting to look at their whiteness, of being white and what that means. This is the area which has not been explored, if you like, on a personal level. This is where it has to begin, in terms of people starting to recognise this dynamic exists. It constantly exists. It gives these differential treatment to people in their lives and life outcomes. What is it that's blocking this, and in a way, and what's missing from it? And it is this other part of the equation, this examination for white people, looking at what that collectively means individually. And I've worked with some incredibly amazing white professionals who are really at the forefront of doing this work and making a difference in a way in which really is educating and enabling white people to understand this much more concretely. And I think the difference between white people and black people in organisations is a need to understand how this works and operates for all of us, to see how we become party to this, and how do we disrupt that, how do we intervene with that in a way that starts to make a difference. Of course, some policy level initiatives and structural initiatives can certainly enhance or create the environment for that. I mean, it's very sad to see the loss in I think it's 2012, where the organisations, it was only under discretionary, that they need to look at the impact, their race impact studies on their organisations. Having things like that are definitely helpful to sort of enforce or to ensure that organisations look at this. But all said and done, that they are small things in the ocean. I think that it is the individuals really starting to realise the power that they've got invested in their position, their colour, in relation to others, will start to really make the shifts in this arena. And that means, that's true, as I said, for black people too, to really engage with critically thinking about the service or the private sector organisation they're involved with in terms of this issue, and not render it invisible. We've got to stop the denial and bring it out into the surface, so that there can be mature discussions about it without people being accused of being, the fear of being accused of being racist. In a way, my analysis is that there isn't anybody that's immune from that in terms of services and the way they're delivered. And so we've got to look at that, and we've got to take responsibility for that. And so, definitely we need an environment where there can be much more open discussion, challenging reflection. I believe, as I was describing that group work, those group work sessions are highly conflictual, very challenging, very uncomfortable, very difficult. Sometimes end up in a lot of anger, a lot of fear. We have to go through this process. So I do think it's very much about human relationships. That's the core of it, and the structures and the way we then construct things will become much clearer and done in a way which reflects the need to challenge inequality at root, because in a way it's the root in our own hearts that we have to tackle. Once we're doing that, then I think the things will open up much clearer in terms of a society that can be genuinely working towards equality, and this is true of all areas.